The backstage area buzzed with nervous energy as contestants prepared for their moment in the spotlight. Among them stood a young woman, her posture timid, her eyes flicking anxiously toward the entrance. She adjusted her simple dress, smoothed her hair for the 100th time, and clutched the microphone stand like a lifeline. Unlike the flamboyantly dressed performers around her, she seemed ordinary, almost invisible, and that made the whispers behind her feel louder. "She doesn't look like she belongs here," one contestant muttered, and she heard it. Her lips curved into a nervous smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She tried to push the fear down, but every step toward the stage made her heartbeat pound louder than the cheering crowd waiting beyond the curtain. The judges, seated in their elevated chairs, were already casting skeptical glances. One leaned back, arms crossed, clearly doubtful. "This is going to be a short audition," he murmured, not hiding his judgment. The other judges exchanged glances, their raised eyebrows saying the same thing. They didn't see anything extraordinary in the girl about to step onto the stage. The cameras caught every movement, every nervous fidget, and broadcast it to the millions watching from home. As she walked toward the spotlight, the floor seemed to tilt under her feet. The bright stage lights blinded her momentarily, forcing her to squint. The audience's chatter became a low roar, and for a moment, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But deep inside, a quiet determination sparked. She had a dream, a voice, and tonight, she would take the risk. Despite the doubts swirling around her, despite the skeptical eyes of the judges, she lifted her chin and stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The stage was set, the tension palpable, and the world waited to see if her ordinary appearance could hide an extraordinary talent. The host's voice boomed through the theater, pulling the young woman into the center of the stage. The bright lights made the audience a blur of faces, yet she could feel their collective gaze, curious and expectant. She gave a small, polite nod, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Every step she took seemed amplified in the silence that had fallen, and even the rustling of her dress sounded unusually loud. The host smiled warmly, trying to ease her nerves. "Our next contestant comes from a small town," he began, his words echoing through the hall. "She has dreamed of sharing her voice with the world for as long as she can remember." The camera cut to the judges. One judge raised an eyebrow, lips pursed, skeptical. Another shook her head slightly, unconvinced. Their expressions said everything. They expected nothing extraordinary, a safe, forgettable audition at best. The contestant's voice was silent for now, but her eyes betrayed a mix of fear and anticipation. She shifted her weight nervously, taking in the rows of faces. The audience murmured softly, some offering encouraging smiles, others whispering doubts. She wanted to speak, to explain herself, to tell everyone that she was more than she appeared, but the words stuck in her throat. Finally, the host turned toward her, microphone in hand, waiting for her introduction. She swallowed hard, her heartbeat echoing in her ears, and gave a soft, barely audible greeting. The judges leaned back, clearly unimpressed, and exchanged glances that said, "This will be quick." But in that small, hesitant voice, there was something fragile and human, something that hinted at potential beneath the surface. Unseen by the audience and judges alike, a spark of determination lit within her. She knew that the first impression might be misleading, that they might underestimate her. Yet deep down, she was ready to reveal a side of herself no one expected, the side that could transform doubt into astonishment. The theater fell into a hush as she stepped closer to the microphone. Every eye in the room was fixed on her, some with curiosity, some with skepticism. The judges leaned forward slightly, bracing themselves for what they assumed would be an average performance. Her hands trembled just a little, and she took a slow, steadying breath, closing her eyes for a moment as if summoning the courage from deep within. Then she opened her mouth. The first note floated into the room, clear and resonant, like a bell ringing in perfect harmony. It was unexpected, soft, yet strong, delicate, yet full of emotion. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some people instinctively covered their mouths in shock, while others sat frozen, unable to look away. The judges' expressions changed almost instantly. Skepticism gave way to astonishment. One judge leaned so far forward it looked like he might topple off his chair. Another whispered under her breath, "Where did this come from?" The note wasn't just technically perfect, it carried feeling, a depth that made the room feel smaller, more intimate. The audience could feel her story in the sound, the years of dreams and hard work wrapped into a single, flawless tone. Every subtle nuance, every gentle vibrato, drew listeners in, capturing their attention completely. The camera zoomed in on her face, revealing a mixture of focus, vulnerability, and a quiet confidence that had been invisible just moments ago. By the time she hit the second note, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. The initial doubts were gone, replaced with awe. Even the harshest critics in the judges' chairs couldn't deny it. This young woman, so unassuming at first glance, had a voice that demanded to be heard. For the first time, the room wasn't waiting to see if she could sing. It was captivated, waiting to hear what would come next. With the first note still echoing in the theater, she let herself fully immerse in the music. Her voice moved seamlessly between soft, tender phrases and powerful, soaring notes that filled every corner of the room. Each word she sang carried weight, telling a story that went far beyond the lyrics. Her eyes closed, and it was as if she and the song were the only two things in existence, drawing everyone else into her world with every rise and fall of her voice. The audience sat spellbound, leaning forward in their seats, caught between disbelief and admiration. Some had tears glistening in their eyes, others were holding their breath, afraid to break the fragile magic in the air. Whispers of awe spread through the crowd. "She's incredible, how is this possible?" Even those who had doubted her from the beginning felt a deep sense of wonder at the raw emotion she conveyed. The judges, once skeptical, were now visibly moved. One of them covered a hand over their mouth, eyes wide, struggling to contain the emotion rising in their chest. Another had tears rolling down, while the third nodded repeatedly, unable to speak, as if agreeing silently with every note. They had seen countless auditions, yet none had ever left such a profound impact so quickly. Her performance built to a crescendo, each note more breathtaking than the last. She commanded the stage without arrogance, letting the music speak for her, showing that talent isn't always loud or flashy, it can be quiet, powerful, and unexpected. By the time she reached the final note, the entire room felt electrified, a collective heartbeat racing in awe. In that moment, the impossible had happened, doubt had been replaced with admiration, and everyone, from judges to audience, knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The final note hung in the air, lingering like a shimmering echo, and for a moment, the theater was completely silent. Time seemed to pause as the audience processed what they had just witnessed. Then, as if on cue, the room erupted into thunderous applause. People jumped to their feet, clapping, cheering, and whistling, some even shouting her name in excitement. Her knees felt weak, and she gripped the microphone stand, tears of relief and joy brimming in her eyes. The judges were the first to rise from their chairs, and the standing ovation they gave her was almost deafening. One judge, still blinking back tears, reached forward and said, "I had no idea you could do this. Your voice, it's unbelievable." Another leaned toward the microphone, her voice shaking with emotion, "You've changed everything I thought I knew about talent. That was extraordinary." Even the most critical judge, who had doubted her from the beginning, nodded in awe, a smile breaking across his face. "You're the real deal," he admitted quietly, almost reverently. The contestant's heart raced as she took in the applause and cheers. Every doubt she had felt before stepping onto the stage melted away. This was the moment she had dreamed of, the moment that proved her worth, not just to the judges or the audience, but to herself. She had been underestimated by everyone, but she had shown them all that talent cannot be judged by appearances alone. As the applause continued, she allowed herself a small, triumphant smile, finally feeling the weight of her own potential. She had walked onto that stage timid and unsure, but she was leaving as a performer who had captured hearts and silenced doubt. The experience was more than an audition, it was a declaration. She had arrived, and no one would ever underestimate her again.